Our next speaker is William Jasper, and he is senior editor of New American Magazine, of which there are some back there on the red table. And he is an author, journalist, investigative reporter, international correspondent, accredited for reporter at the United Nations in New York for over 3 decades, or 30 years, covered many United Nations summits and international conferences. Welcome, William. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are we on? Yes. Is this going to be showing up here too, or just there?
Just there.
Okay. So you're going to, people in front, you're going to have to crank your necks that way, I guess. My topic today is American Crises. And you'll see in the subhead there, it is American Crises created by globalists and communists to crush America and create a globalist, communist, New World Order under the United Nations. As I said in my introduction, I've been a correspondent at the United Nations for decades, and I've written a couple of books on that. But we're going to dive right into this. How many of you have heard of this term, polycrisis? It's just come about in the last year or two. These are supposedly multiple existential crises: the war crises in Ukraine, China, the Middle East, migration border crisis, the climate crisis, the pandemic crisis, the inflation crisis, the drug cartel, drug border crisis, human trafficking crisis, and there are many more. But this term, polycrisis, was first introduced to us by, this is a web page from the World Economic Forum. You see it up there at the top of the page, World Economic Forum. Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. And the headline on this page says, "We're on the brink of a polycrisis. How worried should we be?" And for those of you who aren't familiar, I think just about everyone is, the World Economic Forum is that group of globalist billionaires that meet every year in Davos, Switzerland. They have the big thing where they all fly in on their Lear jets and their other jets, and then they tell the rest of us that we have to stop driving our cars and start eating bugs and doing all those things because our middle-class consumption lifestyle is destroying the planet. But they say we have a polycrisis, meaning multiple crises, and we should be very, very afraid. Why do they want us to be very, very worried and afraid? Well, it's because they say these crises are going to destroy us. And one of the crises is a possible coming war with China. Here we have from Foreign Affairs, from the Council on Foreign Relations, Xi Jinping says he's preparing China for war. The world should take him seriously. Now that's kind of curious because the Council on Foreign Relations, which publishes that, has for the last 6 decades promoted all of our trade and giving China all of the weapons that now they are pointing at us in a warlike manner. So here we have a NBC story. Air Force General predicts war with China in 2025, tells officers to prep by firing a clip at a target and aim for the head. So in other words, here we're finally saying, China, communist China, is really genuinely a threat. We've had in the New American Magazine quite a few articles on China. This one is War with China, ? So the big question is, are we headed toward war with China? Or, as I submit, are we already in a war with the Chinese Communist Party? And that's the distinction we need to hold. It's not China and the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, which is furiously waging war without us even realizing it or doing anything about it. Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, "In the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. hence to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. And it's my contention here that we are in a war, that China does intend to win it, but they don't intend to use nuclear weapons to do it. They are using a number of other things here. The CCP's COVID bioweapon destroyed hundreds of thousands of businesses, small, medium businesses here, millions of jobs, and closed our churches. One little Wuhan virus did more than all the communists have been able to do, not just here in this country, but in the whole world. For the first time in the history of the world, in the history of humanity, all churches were closed. Most businesses were closed. Jobs and businesses were wiped out. The CCP's COVID bioweapon transformed the United States and most of the world into facsimiles of China's medical dictatorship. The CCP's COVID bioweapon subverted our election system, guaranteeing Joe Biden's White House ascendancy. The CCP's fentanyl offensive is killing our youth and destroying our communities. The CCP is sending massive numbers of Chinese migrants across our border. CCP's Confucius societies and student groups are weaponizing our colleges. CCP's secret police are now boldly intimidating, threatening, and attacking Americans and Chinese who are here in the United States. So, amazingly, while China is being very aggressive, we have the World Economic Forum completely allying, partnering with them to achieve most of their objectives. This is a special issue of the New American Magazine, a bookazine, on the Great Reset. And the Great Reset is the World Economic Forum's plot to reset, that's their term, which is to re-engineer all of humanity. They want to do it economically, politically, socially, biologically, morally, religiously. Complete remake of the whole planet, all planetary citizens. It's as totalitarian as you come, and yet here, these are the supposed capitalists who are helping the communists do it. This is a very interesting thing. People need to get a hold of this and understand what's going on. Now, here is the World Economic Forum. They say, this is always their slogan, committed to improving the state of the world. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party says it's doing that too. And of course, Xi Jinping and Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, are great comrades. He's always welcomed. He's the darling of the World Economic Forum now, Xi Jinping, the current dictator of the most bloody, mass-murdering regime in history. Now, this Great Reset is an actual attempt to implement the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. How many have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? Just about everyone has. Every school child has, because it's mandatory in all the schools that we have these UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals, 169 targets, 7,000 activities, and they keep adding to it all the time. It's as totalitarian as it comes. This is a Mao Zedong on steroids, and yet we have all of the countries of the world signing on to this, saying that the United Nations should be overseeing this implementation of this global plan to reshape all of humanity. And the United Nations boasts, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, boasts that China helped write the Sustainable Development Goals. Yes, the Communist China helped to write this. And when you look at how they are talking about commanding and controlling all of your aspects of your lives, it's very easy to see the Chinese Communist Party's hand in it. Now, this is how many have heard of this, unrestricted warfare? This is by two of the PLA, People's Liberation Army, top strategists. This came out over a dozen years ago. Actually 24 years ago, Grand Warfare Strategy. And they're using all the military and non-military means to compel the enemy to submit to one's will. So they talk about using political, social, economic, all kinds of warfare. And that was 2 decades ago, but there have been more actual explicit plans issued since then. This man is hardly known to the average American or people outside of elite circles. His name is Jin Canrong. He's a top CCP advisor. This is him giving a speech on the 10 benefits of taking back Taiwan. This is on YouTube. You can watch it on there. And he is one of their top advisors. He is what is known as a wolf warrior. That's the aggressive, new, belligerent communist officials who don't conceal their actual plans anymore. He lays out the CCP stealth plan to defeat the United States. He says we need to create multiple enemies for the U.S. to bog it down and deplete its resources. We need to manipulate U.S. elections to control Congress. We have to invest in the United States to make U.S. independent and control the U.S. market. We have to control UN agencies and international organizations like the WHO, IMF, the WTO, and the FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization. And then it says he said we have to continue stealing U.S. technology. He comes right out and says it. He says the U.S. and some of the other countries won't sell us the technology that we need and we want, so we have to keep stealing it. And he says we have to take over completely the South China Sea and its international waters, which of course are strategic trade ways for all of world commerce. Only a few, besides the New American Magazine, here's the Epoch Times, wrote about this. This is a CP advisor, outlines detailed plan to defeat the U.S., including manipulating elections. That's talking about Jin Canrong. But here's the interesting thing. Jin Canrong, he's a top CCP communist advisor. What is this here? Well, this is him. You can see up in the top left-hand corner, Aspen. This is the Aspen Institute. This is an elite U.S. think tank, and he is one of their top advisors. What's this here? Oh, this is the World Economic Forum. So what's this top communist who says we need to take over the United States and manipulate their elections and steal their technology? He's one of the big advisors for the World Economic Forum. Well, interesting that he says we have to get the United States bogged down in many different conflicts and crises. Basically, he's repeating what Che Guevara said back during the Vietnam War. He said, create 1, 2, 3, many Vietnams. He said at that time that was part of the strategy to get the United States involved in wars, conflicts on many different fronts. And where did he get that idea? Well, he, of course, here's a picture of him, Che, with Mao Zedong, and he said, this is him in Beijing with the world's greatest mass murderer. And of course, that was the strategy that was outlined by China during the Vietnam War. And who is this individual? This is Mark Rudd. He's an SDS leader, Weather Underground terrorist leader. And I put this up here because it's important. This is back at the time in the 60s and 70s when he and the other SDS leaders were creating chaos around the country, causing riots throughout college campuses and in inner cities. And he said, referring to Che Guevara and Mao Zedong, quote, thus, we have our slogan, create 1, 2, 3, many Columbias. Now, he changed the last word from Vietnam to Colombia. Why did he do that? He was talking about Columbia University, where they had created a riot. There's a picture of him at Columbia University on his book. He's a college professor now, of course, 50 years later. And he's a mentor to the new SDS, to the BLM, to Antifa, the ones who are causing riots all across the country. So he's still channeling Che. That's him on the left as a college professor now. He has a blog online. He advocates all of this. He didn't really pay any price for all of his terrorism. He was a member of the terrorist Weather Underground, and he's helping lead that today. But he recognizes that we have to have 1, 2, 3, many Columbias, 1, 2, 3, many Vietnams. So what are those 1, 2, 3, 4 Vietnams or Colombias? Well, there are many different crises, one of which is a level of warfare which China uses for war with the U.S. by other means. That's fentanyl. And it's interesting that this is in Bloomberg News. Bloomberg finally, this is just last month, finally, years later, we've been reporting this for years, Bloomberg finds out that, oh, China's using fentanyl for war against us. Well, yeah, that was obvious for a long time. In fact, here is a man who I consider one of the top China experts, Dr. Stephen Mosher. He says, quote, in short, Beijing is using the drug cartels to wage a kind of proxy war against the United States and its citizens. And as American casualties mount, so do China's profits. China is making bank off of our deaths here now, over 70,000 just in this past year. Americans killed, and that's just the ones killed that are murdered by these drugs. You see them on the streets of Seattle, San Francisco, New York, any major city, the fentanyl zombies who are not dead yet. They will be sometime soon, but until they are, they're going to continue to be another crisis in our cities. So Hamas, they're back in the news after not hearing anything about them for a while. On October 7, they did their big attack on Israel out of Gaza. So what does that have to do with China? Well, Hamas is a proxy for China. Hamas is run by, yes, Hamas is supplied and run by Iran, which is backed by Russia and China. So they are a terror proxy in the Middle East and now here in this country. And of course, this is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is several times larger and more lethal and more heavily supplied with arms than is Hamas. They have massive arms in Lebanon. And where do they get them? Russia and China. This is the new alliance. Here you have, again, Bloomberg, finally, this is just a short time ago, China, Russia, and Iran are slowly ganging up on the U.S. Well, gee, it's nice that they finally realize that. This new alliance has actually been underway for over 10 years. China is the biggest trade partner with Iran. It and Russia supply them, the Iranians, with all of the weapons they need to create havoc themselves, but also to supply Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist groups. So here we see Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi shaking hands with Xi Jinping in Beijing. Here is Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman welcoming President Xi Jinping to Riyadh. And here is the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, reconciling Iran and Saudi Arabia, who have been adversaries since forever. But thanks to Communist China, he's bringing them together to both work to destabilize the Middle East and destabilize our economy. And of course, Xi Jinping is very close to Vladimir Putin as well. And here he is in our own, we could show leaders from all over the U.S., I mean all over the Western Hemisphere too, but this is Venezuela's communist dictator Nicolas Maduro in Beijing. And of course, China is exploiting and is helping to destroy our border. If you have no border, you have no nation. This is a Newsweek story showing record number of suspected terrorists have crossed the U.S.-Mexico border. You've seen the video footage of this. No country can survive if this continues. But here again, we see the coincidence of communist China with the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is on record as being against borders, against national sovereignty, and for allowing migration Not immigration. Migration is different from immigration. Every country has immigration. You have to come, just like in your home. Nobody can just walk into your home. You have to invite them. And you decide the conditions under which they will come in. Every country does the same thing. But they say, no, 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 no. Everybody has a right to just come in and go. Of course they want that if you want to destroy a country in resistance to your plans. And of course, we saw recently the discovery of a Chinese-run biolab in Reedley, California. What was there? Well, they had Wuhan virus. They had all kinds of viruses and things. Right there, supposedly nobody knew about it until a health worker went there to check on a complaint. How many of those are here in the United States? With the way in which, particularly now under the Biden administration, we've been opened wide, it's a fair chance that there are many of them besides this. All of a sudden, we discovered this a few months ago that Communist China has secret police stations here in the United States. It was first discovered in New York City, but and this is a report, one of the reports we did on that. But this is a report from Safeguard Defenders, a group, research group based in Madrid, Spain. And these are all the countries they showed, over 53 countries where China has established secret police stations. Over 100 documented globally, and that's in the United States, Canada, Spain, France, Sweden, Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Australia, Argentina, etc. And of course, we remember the Chinese surveillance balloon coming across the country, allowed to come clear across the country. It wasn't stopped. We had the resources to stop it, but we didn't. And then it was confirmed, what most of us suspected, that it was sending back data in real time to Beijing. So from that to the complete idiocy here, we have succeeded in destroying our country to such an extent that we can't even tell what a woman is. We cannot tell little boys that they can't be girls or little girls that they can't be boys. You see that we are being set up for complete destruction. Who is this gentleman? This is Ku Dongyu. He is the Secretary General of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. That's the organization that wants to control all food and all farming worldwide. And he is an agenda contributor, you see there down in the left-hand corner, of the World Economic Forum. That's his picture from the World Economic Forum webpage. And the building that you see in the background is the building in Rome, the FAO, the UN building that he is in charge of. So the World Economic Forum is well known as a bastion of all the big globalist billionaires, Bill Gates being one of the biggest ones of all this, and he's a World Economic Forum guy. But here he is being celebrated in China daily, and he's there with Xi Jinping. Here he is, a little close-up. This is him at the Bao Forum, which is held every year in Bao. And all of the big globalist, big business guys go there to do business in China. Here's two of the biggest Wall Street guys. So this says Wall Street doubles down on China while corporate America now moves the other way. A lot of businesses are saying, hey, it's not looking very good over here in China. But big Wall Street guys, like on the left there, Larry Fink, he's BlackRock, it's the largest fund in the world, and his Carlyle buddy there on the right, they are all in favor of it. They're also pushing the CBDC, central bank digital currency. And this is the World Economic Forum, a picture of Zhu Min. He is the one who designed central bank digital currency. Yes, Communist China's economist designed this central bank digital currency that we are supposed to implement now here. This just gives some of the many places. He teaches at all of our Johns Hopkins, at Harvard, at Princeton, at Fudan University, he's a deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, and yet we're supposed to follow him and allow the federal government to take control of all our money, take all our real money, give us digital currency, and implement a Chinese social credit system here. So one of the earliest measures that Joe Biden did was to start us going toward a digital currency. This is one of his executive orders. So somebody has to say it. We are witnessing treason. It is a conspiracy, much of it out in the open. So in the last couple of months, you've seen the Biden Justice Department. They've issued all these indictments and charges against President Trump and many of his lawyers and advisors, charging them with conspiracy. They've given over 100 counts of conspiracy. They don't mind using the word conspiracy against you, me, and everybody else. But as soon as you point to what they're doing, they say, oh, you're one of those conspiracy theorists. So we've been saying this is a conspiracy for a long time. There are hands that are directing this disorder. That's our issue of the New American Magazine, called Directing the Disorder. Its focuses on the Council on Foreign Relations, the globalists who have been pushing this for a century. Kissinger at 100, he has been one of the prime architects of this, of treachery and betrayal. David Rockefeller, he has already passed on, but this is one of his admissions. He said in there, yeah, well, if you say I'm working for world government, I plead guilty. That was in his own memoir there. So I would just like to end, this is a very brief thing here, that I was very inspired yesterday because a lot of people, when they survey all of these things that are happening all around us, they go, oh my gosh, I can't handle all of this, you know? And that's part of the plan. In fact, that's what Jin Kanrong says. He says if we do enough of this, get enough of this stuff going, people become so disoriented that they can't fight back. So yesterday I was at your wonderful Vietnamese Cultural Center here in Seattle, and thanks to all our good friends who took me there. And I saw, you see back here on the back page, the proclamation to military officers. This is General Tran Hong Da, and great Vietnamese general. I kind of think of myself as a military historian. I read all kinds of stuff, and I have all kinds of books on military history, but I was unfamiliar with this great patriot. And so when I went back to my room last night, I looked up on the internet all I could find on him, and I put this together here, which they have on the poster here. Thank you. So I would like to just end with this because it's so inspiring. We think that, oh my gosh, we have all these terrible things faced. Imagine what the Vietnamese people were facing back then in the 13th century with a whole Mongol horde coming down on them. Nobody in Europe had been able to defeat the Mongols. Nobody in India or in the Middle East or in Russia had been able to defeat them. So they come barreling down on Vietnam, and a lot of people wanted to give up. They said, we can't fight them. So this is very, very inspiring. He said, every century has produced its heroes who sacrificed their lives for their country. What if people only engaged in their own business died of old age at home by the fire? Would their names be inscribed in the history books for 1,000 generations? You and I were born into a period of troubles, and we have grown up at a time when the motherland is in danger. Since our motherland is in danger, I cannot eat during the day. I'm sleepless at night, weeping in tears, angry at the enemies. I would rather die in the battlefields with my body wrapped in horse-skin. Your emperor is humiliated. Your country is threatened. How could you be indifferent? not worrying or ashamed. So he fought brilliantly, fearlessly, and they defeated the Mongol unconquerable horde. And that's what we have to do as well. And we can. With God's help, God's blessing, we will succeed. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. That's